Everyone, it's Lindsay, and today I'm back with a Bible journaling process for you guys. I'm working in my interleaved Bible. This Bible has a full blank page in between each and every page of text, and I'm going to be creating with a variety of products from Felicity Jane. I'm doing kind of a mix and match, pulling out some things from my stash to put together this piece, and I'm going to do a fun, interactive tip-in element to hide my journaling. So I wanted to show you how I do that. But off camera, I already went ahead and prepped a few things. I picked a few of the, I think, Lola and Sarah papers from Felicity Jane and fussy cut out some of the florals. I love that you can mix and match the Felicity Jane papers because there's usually colors that repeat themselves or tones of colors that you see over and over. And so pinks and yellows and this kind of minty color is a color that you see pretty often. So I'm able to kind of mix and match. So I pulled out a variety of different papers and I'm going to create this little floral piece that's going to flip up to reveal my prayer. And then these little wonky shapes are going to be some mountains because I'm journaling in Psalm 61, lead me to the rock, says, hear my cry, O God, listen to my prayer. From the end of the earth, I call to you when my heart is faint. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I, for you have been my refuge, a strong tower against the enemy. Let me dwell in your tent forever. Let me take refuge under the shelter of your wings. For you, O God, have heard my vows. You have given me the heritage of those who fear your name. Prolong the life of the king. May his years endure to all generations. May he be enthroned forever before God. Appoint steadfast love and faithfulness to watch over him. So will I ever sing praises to your name as I perform the vows day after day. So focusing in on this verse 1 and 2, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. So these shapes are going to be little mountains. So I just roughly sketched out some little mountain shapes out of some of the pattern papers, and I'm going to add some embellishment, some stitching detail, things like that. And then I already went ahead and stamped out some of the phrasing from this verse using the typewriter alphabet from Felicity Jane, and I stamped it out on some of the grid paper, some of the Essentials grid paper. And then I also typed out part of the verse. So it's all going to come together fairly quickly. Let me go ahead and put you guys on fast forward and we'll put this page together. Okay, so I'm going to start out by prepping my page with some white gesso. I don't typically page prep. This is not something I do all the time, but in this particular Bible, I have been using some white gesso just to give myself a white background to start with. But I will also be doing some stamping with a variety of different inks, and so this will prevent the bleed through, but bleed through doesn't bother me. But the gesso does help with that. So if you are somebody who is bothered by bleed through, then the interleaved Bible is probably a good option for you because then you can, lay down a good layer of gesso like this, and then you've got a white background and things are not going to bleed through. I do have a little bit of problems here in a minute with some oxide ink that I stamped on there not wanting to dry, but other than that, it just gives you a nice canvas to work on. So once I added 2 layers of the white gesso and dried that, I went ahead and added some black watercolor splashes just to kind of build up the background a little bit. There's going to be a lot going on this small space, so I'm just trying to work in layers. I pulled out a couple of different stamp sets from Felicity Jane. I have the Grace stamp set, I believe, and then the Hope stamp set, and then the birthday one from last year. I'm not sure if either one of these are still in the shop. If they are, I will have those stamp sets linked down below for you guys. But I just went through my stash and found some stamps that had a variety of stars. Not that this is necessarily a night scene, but I wanted to add some things up at the top here, and it was just a way to kind of pull up a little bit more of the color since it's going to be so much heavy color at the bottom of this page with the mountains and the flowers. Stamping the stars in a variety of colors kind of helps sprinkle that color up towards the top. So now, because I'm working on a gesso background, I was able to kind of fix my oops here. So when I stamped that first star down in the Distress Oxide ink, it mushed and wasn't a good impression. But as long as it was wet, I could pick it up right away. And it did leave a little bit of a smudge, but I was able to pick most of it up and then just restamp, not a problem. But this particular ink did not really want to dry on top of the gesso, so just keep that in mind. And then another oops there, I flipped my ink pad over and got a little smudge on my Bible. So oopses happen. It's not the end of the world. I know I see comments about that, you guys getting stressed out about making mistakes on your pages. It is not the end of the world. Just go with it. It's not a big to-do. So I've pulled out some Gina K inks, some Creative Retreat inks, just a variety of different inks in different colors, pulled from the colors of papers that I'm using, and just stamping those variety of stars up at the top again, just to bring a little bit of that color up to the top. A lot of this is going to get covered up with my title, but that's okay. It's just kind of building up at the background. And I had laid my mountains down just to kind of get an idea of where they were going to be when I was doing my stamping. So I've also pulled out a variety of black and white papers from Felicity Jane. This is a mix of like the Lola 6x6, the Rebecca papers, and the Catherine papers. And I'm going to create little snow-capped mountain tops on these mountains. So I'm just laying my mountain shapes on top of the black and white paper, roughly outlining it, and then I can cut that out and create kind of a wavy bottom to it, and that's going to give me the look of those mountains. So you could just use plain white cardstock, but I'm trying to use up what I have in my stash, and I have a lot of Felicity Jane papers, so I figured this would be a good opportunity to pull those out and use a few different ones. I love this black and white cross paper. This one is from the Rebecca paper pack, I believe. Again, all of those will be linked down below for you, and most everything that I used was still available in the shop. I tried to consciously pick things from my stash that you guys could still get from Felicity Jane. So you can see there are my little tops on my mountains there. I'm going to go and just add a little tiny bit of adhesive to the center because I am going to take these over to my sewing machine and add some stitching detail to hold those down. I don't want to add too much adhesive because then it gums up my sewing machine. But now I can go ahead and stick these down. These are going to be the main focal points. They're going to take up the majority of this page. This is kind of one of the nice things about working in the interleaved Bible is you have these full blank pages, so you can do big, bold entries like this one I did here, and really use larger elements, have more space on there to do your journaling, and with that interactive tip-in piece that I'm going to do here, it really gives you a lot of space to create on, which sometimes it's just nice to work with bigger elements. Here's where I realized my ink wasn't quite dry and it was kind of transferring onto some things, so I wanted to heat set that, and in the end it's not a big deal. So I can start piecing together my title here. It's going to say, "When my heart is overwhelmed," that's this little piece here, "lead me to the rock that is higher than I." And that is pulled directly from those verses in Psalm 61. And I just, again, stamped those using the typewriter alphabet stamp onto some gray and white grid paper. I could have stamped directly onto the page, but when I'm stamping this many letters, you're kind of at risk of messing up your stamping, and I didn't want that to happen. I also wanted to make sure everything would fit okay. So this is a great alternative, is stamping them out on a separate piece of paper. It could even just be white cardstock, and then cutting them out into word fetty shapes and then attaching those down. And it just gives you some more freedom to rearrange your words and figure out the spacing, and you can stamp on a hard surface and not be stamping directly into your Bible. So that's a little trick that might help. And then I broke it up by bringing in some of the Catherine Alpha stickers, again, just to bring in some more color, and I didn't want it to be so heavy on the top with that black stamping. So this just kind of broke that up a little bit. I did outline them with a black pen just to kind of help tie them in with the black stamping that I had done. And I really loved that Catherine alphabet set has several different colors throughout the alphas, and so it's just very easy to stick them down and you get the random colors in your words like I did here. So I'm going to lay that flower there off to the left. I ended up not sticking that down. I'm going to use something else here in a second, but here are those florals that I had fussy cut out of the different floral papers. The Felicity Jane floral papers are always a favorite of mine. I had to go through my stash and find any. I didn't have very many floral papers left, and then find ones that were still in stock was kind of tricky because those are the first papers that I usually use. But I kind of got my cluster together where I wanted it. I'm flipping it over, adding some adhesive, trying to hold things kind of in place, and then I'm going to stick a piece of 6x6 Essentials white cardstock onto there, and that's going to hold all of those flowers together because, again, this is going to be our interactive element. So I'm going to go through and trim off any of the excess white cardstock. So I'm just kind of tucking my scissors down behind the flowers and really roughly cutting away the white. None of the white will show. I want it just to look like those florals are all one big piece, but they're held together and they kind of have a little bit more weight to them by adding them to that separate piece of cardstock. And so then now I can figure out where that's going to go. Down at the bottom here, it is going to cover up a big chunk of those mountains. I do want a straight edge on the right edge because we're going to create a hinge over here on the right hand side. I am going to use some of my favorite grid washi from Felicity Jane. When I pulled out my drawer, I don't know if you can see, I have 3 rolls of that because I'm so afraid that I'm going to run out of it and it's going to be sold out. So I'm constantly ordering more of that because it's kind of my go-to neutral washi that I use for a lot of different things in my Bible journaling. So I've got my straight edge there. And when I trimmed all this down, I kind of lost a floral there. I am going to switch that out here in a few minutes with a bigger floral, but for now we're going to go with that. And then I'm just going to tear off a piece of this washi. You want it to be smaller than the element that's your interactive element. So my tape is shorter, you'll see here, than that rose on the right hand side. I'm going to apply half of it to the tip-in piece. I'm going to fold it over and adhere the other half onto the back of the page. So again, we're just creating a hinge with the washi tape. So then you can flip this little flap open and that's going to give you a hidden journaling spot. So I can journal on the back side of that. I can add a little white paint or a white piece of paper in there so I can journal on top of the mountains as well. And so it just kind of expands, gives you more room to journal, but also gives you a hidden journaling spot, or gives you a journaling spot at all when you've got this much going on like I do here on this page. And you can see where I trimmed off those florals on the bottom, I saved that piece and I'm going to use that to embellish the left-hand side of the page. I don't always do that, but I usually try to use my cut off remnant pieces somewhere on my layout. That way I'm just not throwing a bunch of paper away, and especially with florals, I'm not wanting to throw those florals away. And here you can see I ended up bringing in that yellow floral that I had laid on the left hand side. I'm going to add that to the tip in just to kind of extend it out a little bit. So I'm kind of fussing with that. And then this piece, I'm applying the adhesive just along the edge. That way I can kind of fluff up the leaves. So none of the text will be covered. I do have plans for this Bible to be a Bible that I can read and study out of. So I won't be covering the text in this particular Bible. So I want to make sure that I can still read my verses over there. And then here I'm going to go ahead and just journal out my prayer on that tip-in piece. And that is pretty much going to be it for the entry. So if you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave those down below. Definitely head on over to the Felicity Jane blog post. You can see I added a little bit more embellishment in the bottom right-hand corner there. You can see those close-up photos over at the Felicity Jane blog. All of the links to everything are down below for you. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed. And until next time, thank you so much. Bye-bye.